Hey, everybody. This is the Helping Friendly podcast. We're doing a quick hit, so we're going to keep it quick. We are talking about last night's night one from Dick's, 8/31, 2023. If for some reason you're tuning in like 3 years from now, I am here. My name is Jonathan. I have Brian Brinkman and our good friend Justin Bruce, who are in Denver at Brian's house. They were at the show last night. I think they had a good time. I'm going to let them tell me all about it, and they'll tell you too. Guys, how are you doing?
I think we're doing well. We got coffee running through the system right now. I just dropped the kids off at school, so it's now I'm going to mow the lawn today. We're going to have a great chill day here in the backyard. Everyone's doing great, and we got another fish show tonight. How are you doing?
3 more fish shows.
Oh my God.
And we started off with a great night one. It's like everything from here on out is gravy. So
Feels really good
really
where we're
is.
sitting right now.
Yeah, that was a hell of a start. Let's just acknowledge that right now. We'll get into all the details here in a minute. But I told my wife this morning, there are definitely people waking up on the East Coast to catch their flights this morning going, God damn it. And you know, I guarantee there's at least one guy saying, well, I'm not even going. I mean, he is going. He's not going to not go, but he said it to somebody. He's like, what's the point? And the point is there's so much mystery and awesomeness ahead, I think, right?
Always. I mean, it's this run at the end of the summer has become routine in the best way possible, where you can set your clock to it. And out here in Denver, coming out here last year, we've got a really good group of people that it's ever growing, ever evolving, that we hang out with throughout the shows, and the weekend becomes its own big event. And it's one of those runs where sometimes it doesn't matter how the band is playing, because it just feels really good to be back at Dick's. The band clearly has a good time here. The fans have a great time here. The venue's really welcoming and really fun. But when they give a little bit more, when they play a show like last night and they open the run with that sort of a statement, if you will, it elevates the experience a bit more, and it feels like a culmination of summer tour.
it felt like a very professional crowd last night. Like we've all been here before and done this before. It's the Thursday night crowd, so not everyone is here.
Right.
It feels like maybe ticket demand, because Fish has played all over the country already, was a little soft. I don't know if maybe there was a small amount of motivation on the band's part, but they, came out and immediately started throwing down.
I feel like, with exceptions like, what is it, 11 to 98, for the most part, I don't think Fish is concerned or even aware of soft ticket demand or whatever. But I do feel like Fish they're just playing well and feeling I think they feel good about how they've been playing. I mean, last weekend was stellar. And yeah, I think Dick's, particularly a Thursday crowd, and last year was the first time we had the 4 nights. And it felt a little bit like the hardcores who came in for all 4, like me, and then the locals who know what they're doing. So ideally, people like me hook up with somebody like you, Brian, who knows where to go, when to be, yada. And so we all just get it done effectively as we can. I wanted to ask you guys if there's any changes, anything different. Fish has been doing this for how many years now? And, you know, what did they change?
I feel like the sound was different last night in a very positive way. The sound has always been, I think, a little above average at Dick's. No complaints about it, but it was loud last night, louder than it has been, but in a very good way. Moving maybe the relay speakers slightly. It just sounded louder, and that was definitely welcome.
Yeah, the relay speakers were definitely moved up closer to the soundboard, which threw our group off as we were going into our favorite section and wondering, wait, are we too far back right now? We're in line with the speakers, but no, they've just moved the speakers up. It looks as though they've added cameras to the base of the speaker set. We were all talking about it kind of post show. One of the things I love about the venue is because it's so big, because you get the wind swirls that come through it, the sound does play a little bit of tricks in the early part of the run. And it usually takes about 10-15 minutes for them to get everything in line. And there's a bit of a bounce at that point. And it's just kind of one of those, um, you don't necessarily ask for that sort of flaw in the system, if you will, but you really appreciate it in the venue because it sounds like Dick's in the same way that
Yeah.
that very full sound almost immediately at MSG sounds like MSG. But to Justin's point, by about halfway through Carini, the sound was just wrapping you in a warm blanket and was holding you there for the entire night. You heard everything, and it felt like you. There were moments, especially in some of the big jams, as we'll get into, where it felt like a headphones listen, and you in the venue with the whole energy of the crowd had a real key into what was going on stage in a way that sometimes you just don't get, which I really liked.
Yeah, it is very different from amphitheater fish, and of course, understandably different from arena fish. But it is just that I think it's absolutely the situation of the delay towers are quite different from the like relay at the back of the amphitheater kind of speakers. It's a very
Yeah.
different sound, and well, it sounds like it was great. Justin, you have anything to add before we dip into the set one?
No, no, nothing overall. But I think a good way to get into it is we had a couple of people in our group calling for, perhaps hoping for, a Carini opener, and it got into it very quickly.
Yeah, it was one of those things I was kind of pushing down because I was like, hey, they just opened up with Carini night 2 of Dick's last year. I don't think we're gonna get a repeat, but lo and behold, Trey's feeling the magic of Frenchie.
Yeah, I thought that was sweet. I kind of missed that detail. I know it was on fish.net, but I missed that detail before I hit play on set one this morning. Full disclosure, I did not watch the whole show because I was out like a sensible person, but I tuned in at Mercury and watched the rest. So let's run this first set down. It's Carini into Halley's Comet to Blaze On, Prince Caspian, We Are Come to Outlive Our Brains, Mercury into Ruby Waves into Character Zero. Carini clocked in at perfish.net exactly 20. So wow, add that to the list. And it's a banger. Like, wow. That's my very professional analysis.
No, there's certain jams. I mean, I think there are certain jams where that's the only reaction, and it was one of those situations where we're 20 minutes into the show and everyone's high-fiving and everyone's beaming and everyone's just kind of like screaming to the heavens. And there's always that sensation, I feel like, just simply because the band's back on stage, regardless what they open with. If this is your first time seeing them in a while, it's that like, feeling I forgot. But when they open with something like that, Carini, that goes through multiple sections, has a very beautiful almondsy bliss peak, and then goes into some distorted post peak jamming. It kind of shows you, I don't know about intentionality, but it shows you that the band, at least in that moment, is feeling very energized about being in the venue, about being here for the run, and it just kind of it pushes things up another notch. Would you agree?
Yes, definitely. And Carini, it started off with that dark, like, we are going to throw down. The energy is it's going to wash over the whole stadium. But then, like 5 minutes in, it took on an uplifting kind of a vibe. It's almost like they couldn't help themselves.
Yeah.
Dumb question, because I heard the Frenchie thing. Is that a James Casey nickname? Nothing related at all there. What is Frenchie?
So this is funny that you ask because last year the rain delay happened.
Oh, right. Yes.
And
okay.
the weatherman of our crew made the smart decision and went back to his car because there's lightning in the area. Jonathan and I have no experience with meteorology, and
Hang on, I am very much an avid wannabe meteorologist.
All right, fair point.
Justin can testify that I talk to him about weird weather things all the time.
That's true, but only one of us was scurrying back to the car, afraid to die of lightning.
Somebody had to hold the spot. Anyways, go ahead.
Jonathan and I had a moment. We held down our seats so that everyone, when they came back, when the band would play, would have space. But during the rain delay, naked hippie in boots came running out on the field, and
Okay.
I have pictures of it on my phone. They're not safe for work. I don't think I'm allowed to send them. Um, but apparently his nickname was Frenchie. The band sang, about a guy in his boots when they opened with Carini last year, and then during the New Year's run, when they did the whole gag of all the past gags and inside jokes, uh, half dozen, 20, whatever it might be, Frenchies came out of a cake and danced around Madison Square Garden. But he unfortunately passed away, and so they wanted to honor him by opening with Carini for him, which was both sweet and kind of reminds you that we are at this point, to your point about James Casey, we are at this point in Fish history where there are people being lost along the way, and there are good friends who are not carrying on the journey with us for a variety of reasons. And that, as we'll get into with the show, like that really hung in the show last night. There was a lot of sentiment and a lot of moments of kind of deep emotional, really embrace this moment because we just don't know what we have tomorrow. And I really felt that throughout it.
I thought it was tough not to view the whole show and the song choices and which style the jams veered into. It was hard for me to not view it through the lens of James passing away.
Yeah.
It's such a big thing, and it really kind of colored the whole show. And I could see if you didn't view it through that lens, maybe it wouldn't. But it seemed like very
I mean,
intentional the way that things played out for me through that lens.
I think that it would probably be impossible for Trey to not kind of
Yeah.
have that in his mind right now, at least to some degree. Like he knows he's here to put on a Fish show, and he's going to do that, and clearly he did. Um, but it's got to be on his mind. So Carini was huge. Haley's was great. Blazon was good. I flipped to the wrong screen to see my timings. These weren't very long, but I'll tell you what, the Caspian, mid first set Caspian, you're like, okay, well, the Caspian haters will be good. It's out of the way. They're the people waiting to catch their Friday flights going, yes. And, but it got weird. It got nice and weird. Some great synth play kind of late in the like 9 minute jam. And I really liked that. And that Mercury, like Mercury. So We Are Come to Outlive Our Brains was a bit of a bust out. It's been a couple years, but the Mercury Ruby Waves combo was intense. Like I really dug that.
Yeah, really quick, just on the Caspian,
Yep.
from our vantage point, page side, you could start to see somewhere around Blazon the glow of the moon rising over Dick's, and there was a sense of, I don't know what the band was able to see. Clearly, by like set two, they were able to see it right over, and it was bright. I mean, this was one of the brightest moons I've ever seen at a Fish show, but there was it felt fitting that like the moon is rising, the band is playing a song like Caspian, sailing on the open sea, and the treacherous storms ahead, and the musical kind of tale that song tells. Plus the fact that over the last couple of years, you're kind of guaranteed some, possibly in the pocket, but like you're guaranteed some jamming out of the band at that point in time, that it felt really fitting both from a set list standpoint and like where it came in the set, but also everything atmospherically that was happening at that point.
I thought like the tenor and the tone and just the intent and intensity was like palpable from Trey, especially during the Caspian. And
Yeah.
it's like, well, this is mid set one and it's 9 minutes long, but like
Yeah.
this has a lot of like heft and feel to it.
Yeah.
So that was nice.
Yeah. Really good. Really good Caspian. If you like those things, which I do.
I'm into it.
Yeah.
Walk Tube, yeah, that was the first since August 6, 2021, Deer Creek. Mercury, really interesting. Fishman got up before they started playing it and tested out the Marimba Lumina. And then they played the first part. And then the moment where the Marimba Lumina comes in, he got up to play it. And I don't think it either wasn't working or he couldn't get the right tone for Mercury. And, Ever the Professional just sat down and added a drum part where there is no drum part in Mercury, and added a little bit extra in that moment. Not really jammed out, but nice fade into Ruby Waves. Very, I thought strange, but in a good way placement for Ruby Waves. I kind of expected, just with how that song has been featured in the last couple of years, that we would get a big early set 2 version, but to get it very late in set 1, knowing that we're approaching the Jonathan Hart trademarked 75-minute mark, that we're in range of this being the last song of the set, and it was about 15 minutes, really, you know, kind of chunky chords. This was the moment where you started to see the like interplay with Trey and Fishman that defined so much of last night. It felt at times, and maybe this is just because it was my first show in a year. Maybe everyone who's been at these shows over the last 6 months has really gotten this sense. But I mean, in the venue, it really sounds like John Fishman has 8 arms, and that he is just playing
Yes.
everything, to quote a movie, everything everywhere all at once. And it's just like this cacophonous wall of sound, and Trey really plays in this interplay back and forth with him. And it's something I mean, it's John Fishman. There's so many all caps John Fishman texts that have been sent in our text chain over the last year for good reason, but like to hear it in person, it really hit me on another level.
It was like the gritty energy. It was just going to be part of the jam. And I like how things throughout last night, but especially in Ruby Waves, kind of got dark, and they weren't afraid to get a rhythmic or like a tonal a little bit, and just to kind of push and to explore. And we weren't just playing, leaning on trite bliss peaks. Like they really went for it last night. And yeah, Fishman was just outstanding, and like got more outstanding as the whole evening wore on. But yeah, Ryan Storm, our buddies, turned around and told me, he's like, oh, late set 1, like, oh, this is weird. Yeah. But it got there. It was a great bookend to a set 1 that started on a great note. It's like, we're already in the green here. Right. I mean, we're doing great with 2 bookend jams in set 1. So yeah, we're all happy campers.
Yeah, my thought on the Ruby Waves jam is really it had balls. There's real meat on that thing. And so I don't think I can add much more to what you guys said. And then punchy quick 0 to close the set. And
I just want to say I really like that placement for 0. Oftentimes we get that as kind of like the 3rd or 4th show encore, and it just feels like, okay, 3 chords and the truth type of thing. And to have it here, it's character 0. And my legs don't hurt that much yet. My neck doesn't hurt. Like I'm feeling fresh on night 1. So like I could really get into like the big arena rock peak of that song. I was very happy with that.
It's easy to jump up and down and throw your fists in the air.
Fresh legs right now.
Weekend. Yeah.
Ask me about it on Sunday though.
Monday morning we're going to be evaluating. Yeah, great opening set for the weekend. And then set 2, Set Your Soul Free, for a whole set. No, Set Your Soul Free, followed by Tweezer into Beneath the Sea of Stars Part 1, Oblivion into Light into Slave, Show of Life, Say It To Me Santos encore. Guys, they did that like short song, big number 2 slot thing that RJ likes to note, and holy crap, did they do it? Talk to me about this set.
It was incredible. Yeah, when we got into Set Your Soul Free, another nod felt like to James, for sure. And then 5 minutes in, when it veered into Tweezer, it's like, all right, here we go. I think that this Tweezer, and I don't think I've asked you, Brian, but I mean, to me, it is at least like a top 10 jam of the year so far. It was the
check the note.
Yeah, look that up. But just a lot of different movements. Like I liked how gritty it started. Trey got into like a lyrical, like not syrupy, but like a motive kind of a lyrical place where he was leaning on Norwegian wood kind of vibes.
I saw somebody, I think it was Zizix, called it the Not Norwegian wood. It was like, it was almost there, but
It
not.
was
But like, yeah,
almost there,
we
and
can get it.
then like there were moments where I was like, just finish that, and we've got a full tease, but like you don't need to finish it because whatever you're doing is like
It's
beautiful here.
fucking
But it was in
cool. Yeah.
that vibe.
Well, and they had done that earlier in set one. I think it was might have been the Ruby Waves. Yeah, with like the song, I heard the ocean sing kind
Yeah,
of a peak
yeah.
in Ruby Waves. So it's like we can kind of borrow from other
Right.
things
Just
without
take the lead here.
fully committing, and it's not going to take away from the quality or the uniqueness of the jam. So yeah, it was fantastic, and the fact that like it could have stopped at the end of the Norwegian Wood lyrical part, but then there was like a little bit of a lull, but then they kept pushing, and like it seemed like that was happening more often than not last night.
That right there, what you're describing is kind of the defining thing for me of just what really excites me when I see this band. And it was something I felt like I saw a lot of really good, really quality jams last year that when they reach that point of do we keep going and see what else is on the other side, more often than not veered into a different song. And sometimes that leads to brilliance. I thought the Saturday night second set last year was one of my favorite second sets I've ever seen, and you don't have a single jam over 15 minutes, I think, in that. But in the Tweezer, to your point, the Carini was the same way. The Light Is we'll get into. The Ruby Waves had this. There was a moment where we can very easily transition into like a What's the Use or into Lonely Trip, and instead let's see what's on the other side. Let's see what keeps going. I think of note, and I think it's important to notate this in the moment. Um, Dix has had some very good tweezers. 9311 was a fantastic version of the song. There's a quality Plinko version from 2014. I'm trying to recall the others. 2018 had a fun one in a Segway set. 2019 got a little gritty, but it's never had that great the Dix tweezer. And last night we had the Dix tweezer. That is a jam that I think over the next few months, we'll have obviously the fall run, but we'll have a break from Fish. I feel like that's a jam a lot of people are going to return to because, to your point, it got really beautiful, and you got a full, with the way that Trey's playing right now and the way that he's getting these full lyrical ideas out, you got a full earned peak, but then you got that other side with Fishman where it was a lot of interplay and back and forth communication.
And Fishman was just, having himself a night, and nowhere was it more evident, I think, than the last section of the Tweezer, where he was just, he's always says, "Oh, I hate drum solos. I'm not, I don't just want to be pounding the drums by myself." But it felt like last night he was empowered to just like go off that extra 10 or 15% and be like, I'm not just the supporting rhythm section. Like, I'm feeling something, I'm going to go for it. And that
100%.
was really a nice aspect of that tweezer, and something we don't always get. So it really elevated the whole jam, I think.
I mean, John Fishman has never just been the supporting rhythm section.
Even for him, though, this is like, man, Fishman is
he was very
on something
and engaged.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that one of the defining facts, one of the defining aspects that really just blows my mind when this band is doing it is when you're getting all four members adding something a bit risky to a jam and seeing what happens in the yes and section of, in the filling your own hay or filling your hay hole, whatever they call that. And Fishman was really leading that, where it was like, I'm going to play some really complex, almost like King Crimson type of rhythms and see if the band can keep up. And Trey was completely game for it. And Paige was over there on his giant synth, and it's some really nice tones out of Mike. It was a full band communication, and I was totally there for it. I was in a very bliss state during that jam.
And from a few rows behind you, I could attest with the double arm pumps whenever they get into a new section and forge new territory.
Needed that.
Man, yeah. So I'm not going to add to that. You guys well covered it, but I will say to something you said, Justin, about kind of hinting at other songs. I definitely heard some of that last night, but I haven't gone back to look at like my they're not tweets, they're something else on Mastodon, but my comments, yes, the toots, about, there's this point in, I think it was in second set, might have been in the Tweezer, where there was definitely a melodic reference to What's the Use, but faster, and they didn't go there, which is great. Listening to First Set, you reminded me of this. I heard Tube, part of a Tube Jam, like something that was identifiably, this is like the Tube Jam in, I think it was in the Ruby Waves, and some timber like jamming in the not the Caspian, the Carini opener. So a lot of good stuff. They, and all of these songs are still on the table, so hopefully they will be awesome when they come around. The drop into Beneath the Sea of Stars. Brian, you and I were texting. I know, like, part of me wants to say, put your phone away, but I know you're keeping a set list, so, fine. Plus, I'm up super late watching this Phish concert. It's nice to get the feedback. And we both, I think, were in strong agreement about what an amazing call that was to go into Sea of Stars. I'm imagining the moon being visible and so massive and so bright played into it. And it was, this song is like RJ says, it's like Dark Star. I don't know if it's exactly like Dark Star, but what it is like one of the few things in the Phish catalog that really has no plan. Like Tweezer, it has a structured song and maybe no plan, but Beneath the Sea of Stars, it's literally designed to, we play the little groove and then we go. And boy, did they. I absolutely loved what they did with their time in that song. And it's one of my favorite things they do, and it's amazing to me that it was only 9 minutes, because time really, Trey sings it in the song, and we're free of time, and they drop the one, they improvise tonically, and Fishman is not really giving a one, but he's all around the kit, and some of his most creative playing happens in passages like this. And I can't wait to go back and re-listen to it.
Yeah, a couple quick thoughts. One, jamming tonically. I saw a guy walking around with a Medeski Martin and Wood shirt last night, and it made me feel like what it must have been like to see Phish in the '90s. When that was the shirt that people were wearing around. That is my get off my lawn statement for the day. Just more Medeski Martin and Wood shirts at Phish shows, please. But yeah, the free of time standpoint, I had a couple moments during the Carini, parts of the Tweezer, and the Beneath the Sea of Stars where I just kind of checked, okay, because I marked when does the song start, and I was just checking based on where they were at in the jam, like how long we're in, and there were so many moments where I was like, we're only 7 minutes into this, like we are completely gone from these songs. And it's something you talked about a lot last year. We'd get back in the car and you'd look at the set list and you would go, it was an incredibly efficient set from Phish. And the point being, you're seeing 9 minutes on paper, but you're actually hearing what 10, 15 years ago would have been a jam that would have been 20 minutes to get just to that musical space. And, last thought, from a Beneath the Sea of Stars standpoint, that's a song that from the moment that they debuted it, I was like, I want to hear that at Dick's. I want to hear that in this wide open space, the Colorado breeze, and all of that kind of mixing through as this song that, it feels like you're trying to catch air when you listen to that song. It could just flitter away and just break apart. If anything, intruded upon it. And the jam in and of itself has that manner where you feel like you're floating in space almost. And last night they tapped into that kind of deep space that they were in the Tweezer. It was equally parts beautiful. It was very ambient, and it felt, for someone like myself who, the ambient jam from Lemon Wheel is something I hold in the highest of high regards. There were moments where I'm watching them, hearing this band that 25 years ago experimented in the style of Brian Eno, still bringing that along today in the same sort of way that they're bringing, Norwegian Wood and what the Beatles taught them, and are bringing funk and what funk taught them, and are bringing kind of weird atmospheric space and noise that 95 taught them. There's all these different elements of Fish that intertwine in these jams, and Beneath the Sea of Stars just kind of lives in a musical space that was once what Fish was living in on a regular basis, but now is something that we just kind of get dabbles of here and there.
And it's very mature and very sedate, but to Jonathan's point and to RJ's point about it kind of being Dark Star-esque, yeah, my only note was, man, God got out there, which is the kind of thing you'd say about Dark Star. It was cool how they pretty much brought the lights down, so it
Yeah.
was dark and we could see like 2 or 3 stars because we're actually
Or
in
in
a major
city.
metropolitan area.
Right.
But had the moon, and it was just a nice vibe. It felt like the Beneath the Sea of Stars was for the nerds, for the fish
Yeah.
geeks in the audience. There was a lot of energy, like some chatter. Some folks took that as an opportunity to kind of take a breather
Yeah.
and sit down, but the band was fully engaged on the stage, and yeah, for the true geeks of the geekiest of the geeky, it was a moment for sure.
Stuff was really going on that stage, and I will say this came up in our chatter on the online last night. We talk sometimes on this show about batting average, and this one has it's batting 1,000.
Yeah.
Like it is this. There is not a bad version of it. In fact, here's my good friend Pie Guy. I have not heard any of last night yet, but I get really excited whenever I see Beneath the Sea of Stars on the set list. None of them have let me down. Yeah, see, that's my
I
dude
think that's
coming
accurate.
in exactly with what I'm saying right at the same time. God bless, love that guy. Anyways,
I like the handle that's 22/7, the
yeah, it's a little
closest
mathy.
mathematical representation of pi. Bravo, Pie Guy.
Dave's the man. But the set continued. We got another Oblivion, Light, Big Light, and Slave. What a beautiful closer. Tell me about the rest of this set, you guys.
Oblivion also felt like it got way farther out than the runtime would suggest. I think it was like 9 minutes or 8 minutes or something. It felt like it got out there almost kind of sideways, a little different than how Oblivion has been jammed so far this year. Light, I have a bad memory, but it feels like that was the most interesting Light that we've heard in a couple of years, at the
Yeah.
very least.
I mean, it was the best I've seen since 2018 in Dix. I mean, that was a top tier Light. We'll get into that.
Yeah,
Like a throwback to early 3.0. I mean,
Yes.
when it was the vehicle.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. But not in, and trite is a bad word to use, but not in like that familiar sense where you're like, okay, I know where we're going to go. This is going to be a good journey, in like a pretty unique way. And I think a lot of that comes back to Fishman, who again was kind of feeling it, and it felt like his rhythms were sort of spreading out as opposed to necessarily pushing forward or in any particular direction. But yeah, just really, really good. And not to skip ahead too far, but like, if you've had maybe a soft set and you cap it off with Slave, you're like, okay, it's going to get me there. I know, but it can kind of seem like, all right, I know the routine. I know the plan.
Sure.
Last night's Slave was just like pure catharsis where you're like, "Oh, this is hitting exactly the way that Slave is supposed to hit after a really enjoyable and
Earned.
rewarding set, and was earned, and was just like, like an intense kind of experience. And again, to bring it back to James Casey, like the Slave especially,
Yeah.
not the last moment of the show that would nod back to him in my
Yeah.
brain, but just really and anthemic. And it felt like everyone in the venue was having that kind of a moment, like that kind of, I'm really generally, like, honestly feeling all the feels right now. I'm not going through the motions. This is kind of like the real deal of why I see Fish. So it was great.
Excuse me. No, I'm on the same page with you on that. If I can offer a slight critique, it's the Oblivion
no.
debut at Dick's. Felt like a very big slot for the song, and they got into a very cool space. I'm right there with you. I loved where the jamming was going. It did seem at a certain point, Trey almost decided we're going to play Light right now, and the band was not feeling it. And there was a moment where I put it in my set list, and then I deleted it, because the band kind of forced him back into the jam. It sounded like,
Not for
and then
very
he was
long.
like, not for very long, and then he was like, no, guys, we're playing light, and I was like, okay, I get it. We're a little late in the set. Like, are we really going to get a full like so, and sometimes this is just how my brain works. If we cut off one song for another jam vehicle, you know, had we worked through that original song, what would we get versus, and this is the game we all play, and it's kind of fruitless. But my point in saying it is that when they got into light, it all kind of made sense, and it was something that we talked about after the Philly the Man show, where they opened the second set as well with only about a 9, 10, maybe 12 minute Set Your Soul Free, came back around and then went into Carini. And it in the moment, to me, it felt like, okay, maybe we're just not feeling it, or we don't have the ideas source right now. And then that Carini turned out to be one of my favorite jams of the overall year. So sometimes that cutoff of a jam that may not be working for one or two members leads to a fresh slate, and now this new jam vehicle will work. And the light, I found, to your point, Justin, I thought it was one of the most interesting lights I've ever seen. It really kind of rejuvenated what that song can do in my mind in a way that you know I was there for the Dix Light back in 2012, which felt like a culmination of so much that the band had been working towards in the early years of 3.0. And they had this one new jam vehicle that really guided them and was there for them as they were going through all of their evolutionary changes during that period in time. And to get that out of light at this point in the show, late in the second set, felt really unexpected, felt really emotional. This got back into that kind of Fishman, Trey, Interplay, King Crimson type of jam, and I will spare you my impression of it that I did over and over and over again on the drive home, as I was just like at an elevated
No,
peak
no,
state.
you got to do it. Let's hear it.
It was
Yeah.
great stuff from Trey. But yeah, to Justin's point, like the fade into Slave, sometimes that can feel like, all right, we've got 10 minutes left. Let's go into one of our trusted set two closers. And here it was a very natural conclusion of light into Slave. It felt like a cool down, but also one more final emotional peak. And with so much kind of swirling in the air right now around Trey, who has written songs in an incredibly vulnerable way about close friends and family members who have passed, and has been very open about what that experience has been like, and shared that in an artistic way and in a really personal way with the community and with the fan base. You got that sort of sense of kind of playing for something more than just the concert.
I thought a really interesting thing about the Light Jam too was how they definitely peaked it, but like there was never a moment where everyone threw up glow sticks or popped off little confetti cannons. It was like almost an arrested peak that felt very mature, and it was like satisfying, and the band was satisfied, but there was not like a crowd like release eruption kind of a moment. And I don't think that's a bad thing. It's like not
That was
everything
yet
has
to come.
to peak. Yeah,
Yes.
that is true. So yeah, just
I mean,
really
that's
good and like mature and just really satisfying.
that's part of why that Slave drop was so good, right? So
Yeah.
Slave is reliable. Slave is, never bad unless it is, which I guess could happen. But most of the time, a lot of the time they go into Slave, you're like, yeah, all right. Last night after that fairly intense, I thought, light jam, when they dropped into Slave, I was like, oh yes, perfect. It just felt so perfect, and knowing where we were going, and they delivered it too. So that's the other half of it, right? So great close to a really great set. Oblivion will have its day.
It will.
Not this weekend, but it was a fine version.
It was.
It shows so much potential.
Well,
so
one just last really quick
go
thought
ahead.
to your point about like that Fade into Slave and like that, how rewarding that feels sometimes. Just looking at this set list, like you get this full gem out of Tweezer, goes into the Beneath the Sea of Stars. You get this full gem out of Light, goes into Slave. One thing that I think is easy to forget, but is one of the joys of Fish, is that contrast between exploration and a soft landing, and not necessarily feeling like we need to raise the energy again, but let's allow people to be contemplative about what just happened. And you got that early in the '90s with all those Tweezers into Life Boys, where it was, here's a big aggressive jam, here's something to kind of cool you down and make you contemplate kind of what just happened, where you're at, how significant all this is, so on and so forth. And I felt like last night we got two of those moments in unexpected ways. That could have gone into a standard great ballad, but instead it decided to go into two songs that have their own energy in very different ways, that kept the flow of the set going, but also allowed you to kind of be reflective and contemplative, which was cool.
Yeah, and let's not forget, like, Light is, all about Eckhart Tolle, right, and which is all about, okay, all I can do is live in this exact precise moment. This is kind of the path to satisfaction and happiness, and like that's a thing that you think about when you're thinking about bigger picture type things, like people passing on to the next life, or whatever it is that you believe. So I feel like Light went back to its like post sobriety like roots, but in a different way, and just kind of tapped into those emotions that the song like kind of germinated around.
Can I also add that it's funny that you raised that, because Brian was just saying, oh, it felt like, Oblivion could have been, but this is what it really is. That's exactly what Light is telling you. So, don't mourn for the jam that was not played. Enjoy the jam that's coming.
These guys are just all full of lessons. It's crazy, man.
Even though there was like a bit of push pull as Trey tried to go into Light, and like I didn't, it wasn't like it was fumbled or like there was that egotistical push pull. It was just like it just took a couple extra moments to get there, so it didn't detract.
Trey, in fact, that's the thing. If they had gone straight there when Trey found it, it might not have gone as well. Trey found it, and the rest of the band wasn't ready, and then they got there. So I want to talk about the encore and the really big question that is now looming after the encore is, when will they let us out of the freezer? Because even though you think you're in a heat dome, you're also still in the freezer, because they did not Tweezer reprise last night. Show of Life was like fast version, right? It was up, like there've been a lot of we've commented on the show, but there've been a lot of faster tempos this summer. And
totally,
this absolutely demonstrated that in Show of Life, which I think honestly really helps the song. Trey's singing was really on point, and I think also it was really, like, I thought it was a really nice version of the song. And then surely we were all going, all right, had you already started to write Tweezer reprise when they dropped into Santos?
I had not, only because I feel like the move tends to be, if they open with Tweezer, if they play Tweezer on the first night of a run, that they tend to hold it for the last night, like to cap
they don't
off the
do
run.
that as much as I think we think they do. And
I think you're right.
You to come back with the numbers on that later.
I think I want to look into it, because you're right. But I hadn't, just because that was where my head went. I thought, to your point, like Show of Life, it had a little bit more pep in it. I want to direct listeners to the Albany 2018 version, which is my favorite version of the song, which is the exact opposite. It has this very slow, elongated midsection. But yeah, I don't think that anyone who is kind of clued into what goes on with the Fish, within the Fish world, when they started Show of Life, it just was there wasn't a lot of dry eyes. There was a lot of understanding of what Trey was saying, and that's a song that I think
he started
has been
the show with a dedication to a fan who passed, and then they end with this. Arguably, they end with this, and then they give you Santos, because you got to have something rocking to walk out the door with. But I mean, it was a statement of a show.
Yeah, it was super effective too, because Show of Life, like I was getting weepy. It was just hard to view the entire show and the emotional journey that basically we had gone on, especially through the prism of losing James. It was a moment. It was really emotional, and I think if they would have played Reprise, it would have been redundant because Santos was so intense. It was like,
Right.
okay, we've taken you there, we've felt our feels, but this is a rock show, and don't worry, we're going to send you out the door with with a little mustard, and sizzling
He was
Santos.
he was never going to follow Santos. Once they dropped into Santos, I was like, oh well.
It was
I mean,
good.
I won't
Yeah.
turn this off, but I could because this is the last song.
Yeah, it was good, and I think Show of Life is it's had its detractors because sometimes lyrically it feels a little too on the nose. But how are you going to talk about friends moving on and friends, passing on, and the significance of the moment and this experience without being too on the nose? So I've always kind of been a fan of the song. It's felt really emotive to me from the start, especially with it almost spoke to. I think it debuted in early 2010, and it spoke at the time. It felt like to, you know, uh, these guys were approaching 50, and the band was back together, and things seemed good. And it felt like this. Wow, this is a wild, crazy journey we all go on, and here we are, and we get to share into this. And now, over the last 10, 12 years, that song has taken additional meanings as life continues to evolve and change. And then, yeah, Santos, man. Big dumb rock songs do big dumb rock things, and you just smile, and you have your hand in the air, and the glow sticks are going, and it's just a great way to cap off the first night, which I felt like was a very, very, very good Fish show that had some incredible moments that I will be re-listening to for a very long time. My biggest highlight, I think, is still the Carini. You got that shock value. You got a really just deep multi-layered jam. But I'm curious, did you have?
I think the Tweezer was a bigger highlight for me, just because it just kept going and really charted some new territory. I have a problem with my brain, so while listening to the show, I was like, okay, well, let me put this in the context of what else we've heard so far this year.
You're not the only one.
Don't do that yet.
So
it's for Monday.
It really, the Carini was definitely a big highlight, but for me it was the Tweezer. But really the takeaway was just the overall emotional, just the willingness to go there and to feel the feels. I think that's not something everybody can do, but it's something that Trey can do and that Fish can do. And if you're like open to that journey, and it was a great ride last night.
I want to go back to Show of Life before I just kind of wrap my thoughts on the whole show, which is, there was a time in the 90s when I was a young Fish fan and a young Deadhead, and people were moving over across scenes, and a lot of the Deadheads and
torches were being passed. Is that what you're saying?
So many torches. But no, a lot of people's commentary to the negative about like, Fish, they just don't have any like emotional weight or any of that stuff. Fish has all of that now. Now they don't have the writing of Robert Hunter. They have different writers, and so they have different voices, and they have different ways of saying these things, but they definitely have so much emotional weight. And it's not just because we've been seeing them so long and we're carrying that baggage and applying it to silly songs, perhaps, because this definitely has silly songs, but they bring all of that now. And so what more could we ask for? This is a beautiful show. I enjoyed it as a whole. I really look forward to figuring out which of these great jams I like the most. But right now, I think Sea of Stars is probably my highlight from last night.
It's a good one. We are now at the point of looking ahead to 3 nights, which was the standard Dick's run, and so now is the time to
4 nights standard now, baby.
4 nights standard now. It's now time to have a little bit more coffee and rest You know, I felt last night like I had to ice my knee, I had to ice my neck, just to like keep myself fresh. I feel like an aging vet on a contending NBA team that in mid-May is just like, hey, I got to get some time in the ice room, or else I'm not going to be able to make it out there for you, coach.
At least you're acclimated to the atmosphere. You don't have to get on the oxygen to keep going, right?
This is true. This is true. This is the elevation has finally agreed with me. I still can't run further than 3 miles without stopping and walking, which is an endless detriment to me as someone who loved running marathons. But I can hang with the elevation to a certain degree.
And I think, like I mentioned before, because Phish has already played a string of shows on the West Coast, they've played all over the South, they've played all over the East. Like, it felt like the folks who were here last night really
Shout out to
really
the
wanted to be
Northeast
here.
who are feeling left out both by Phish and by your state just now. But go ahead.
But
Fully intentional from the man in Las Vegas.
it was very it was very professional and down to business, and that's exactly what I like my Phish to be. I like it to be serious folks who are serious about having a good time.
No fucking around, except when it's appropriate.
Don't party too much. Tone it down.
NFA, guys.
All right. Hey, guys, you have yourselves a great weekend. We at HF Pod, although maybe not me, I don't really know what my schedule is. We'll be back tomorrow, I think, right, Brian? To do this again. Yeah. Somebody will be on a camera and a microphone, and we'll talk more about tonight's show. And yeah, thank you for tuning in and downloading us. And yeah, more to come.
Thanks, guys.
Adios.